It's time to check in with the Talk Radio News Service, talkradionews.com, here on the Nicole Sandler Show, radioornot.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
And I believe we are extremely honored with the presence of Zack Baddorf. Zack, is that you?
Yes, I'm here reporting from Gaziantep, Turkey, which is about an hour from the Syrian border. I've been in country in Turkey for about a week now, and I'll be here through September 1st, so I hope to come back on your show and update you some more later.
Absolutely. First and foremost, stay safe. God bless you for what you're doing. Real, journalism on the ground where the news is happening. Tell us, what is happening where you're at, and what you've seen while you've been over there.
Great. So let me describe what's happening. I mean, I am in Gaziantep, which is pretty close to the Syrian border. Now, Turkey has accepted about 500,000 Syrian refugees. Of those, about 200,000 have been put into, have gone to refugee camps, which are run by the Turkish government. I just went to a refugee camp about 2 days ago with UNICEF, United Nations Children's Fund. And in the camp, I saw that, the educational services they provide, the health care, the food, and the Turkish government is doing a really terrific job. I've been to refugee camps before as a reporter in Asia, in Africa, and the quality of this is really high. That being said, the financial burden at this moment for these camps is mostly, the vast majority is being paid by the Turkish government, not by the international community as a whole. UN agencies have asked for about $3 billion and to support the Syrian refugees until the end of this year, which is one of the largest appeals ever, because the humanitarian crisis is also one of the largest they've ever had to deal with, bigger and about this, approaching the size of the one in Rwanda back in the 90s. And it's that big. It's that big of a crisis. They estimate that 40% at this point of the money that they've asked for to support the refugees has come in. And I should add that, there are 1.5 million Syrian refugees who have fled the country to escape the conflict. And by the end of this year, the UN expects that number to reach 3.5 million total refugees, Syrians who have, fled the conflict in one form or another to Lebanon, to Iraq, to Jordan, or to where I am, to Turkey.
Zack, and by the way, if folks want to check out more about you, your website is baddorf.com. Am I pronouncing your name right, Zack?
Yeah, Baddorf, that's exactly right.
It's BADDORF.com is your website. I should have mentioned that to begin with. I guess shocking. Refugee camps are usually pretty horrific. Can you describe for our listeners just kind of bring them into what the refugee camp that you visited was like?
Yeah, absolutely. So the camp I was at, as I said, was in pretty good conditions. I mean, they're staying in tents. They have running water and electricity. I've been to other camps before in parts of Africa and Asia that do not have these things. They're basically living in very poor conditions, let's say. But the ones here are pretty good. And they have educational services, and they're well protected by some sort of Turkish security force. But that I should say, even though the conditions are relatively good, it means that some of them have been stuck here for a year, just waiting. They want to go home. They want to go back to their families, to their jobs. They're not economic refugees. They're seeking. It's not a natural disaster. This is a man-made situation. This conflict, a situation that can be resolved through talking. It could also be resolved through weapons. More violence. The Syrian opposition groups are calling on the West, mostly the United States, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, to provide more arms so they can really fight and take down this regime. But the United States in particular is very concerned. What if these weapons that we provide fall into the wrong hands? Meaning the various Al Qaeda groups that are having their own strongholds in the country of Syria, taking advantage of this security vacuum.
Right. What do you, Zach? What do you think is the most important news that you'd want people to know that you've found or that you've seen from being there?
That's a great question. I think let me answer that by sort of sharing a story. I just earlier today talked to a refugee who was arrested. He was in Syria. He's in Turkey now. He spent about 8 months in jail. And he was arrested 4 times by the Syrian regime. He was arrested once for about a day, once for about a week. The next time was 4 months, and most recently about 8 months. And he was only recently released, and he's now living in Turkey, escaping from the regime because he was a protester. He was telling people to stand up for their rights. He was organizing demonstrations, not violent in any way, but he stood up, and basically they put him in a jail cell. And I should warn you, this is a little horrific. So if you're squeamish, you might want to turn down your volume just a little bit for the next 30, 40 seconds. They put him in a jail cell for what was about 6 feet by 2 feet, along with 8 other people. So they're about the size of a bathroom, wow. 8 other people. And then the ventilation system in there was such that it was so difficult for them to breathe. They did have some sort of ventilation in the beginning, but then it went out for some reason. And so for 2 days they were stuck with very, very little air. And he started to hallucinate. He started seeing things, and he was basically going crazy. And at some point during those 2 days that he was in this particular cell, 7 of the 9 people in that cell died. So he was stuck in the cell with them until they finally let him out. And what they did, he says, what they do with the bodies, these Syrian regime forces, is they either burn them, throw them in a river, put them in mass graves, or just leave them on the street. I mean, they're just it's just an example of the brutality of this regime. And one continuing on this story, because it's so powerful, is after they took him out of this small cell, they moved into a larger one for the remainder of his time when he was in prison for 8 months. And in this cell, it was about 25 to 30 feet by 25 to 30 feet, so 25 feet by 25 feet roughly, with 100 people inside. So it was so packed inside that when they slept, they had to sort of crouch into a little ball, and because there was just no room. And he said that on occasional mornings you'd wake up and you'd feel the person next to you that they were cold, and what it meant was that they had died in the middle of the night. So they would knock on the door of the cell and tell the guards that another one has died, and they take the body out and do who knows what with it. The 100,000 people have died in this conflict so far, according to some estimates. These folks who I talked to said the numbers are going to be much higher once we're able to uncover what actually happened during these years. It is a horrific conflict for people, and I think the message here is we need to do something. We can't just let this continue to happen. Whether that means working more forcefully to stop Iran and Russia, to stop providing arms, fighters through Hezbollah or whatever, to fighting against the rebel groups, supporting the regime, or whether that's some sort of negotiation, or even if that's providing more arms so the rebels can stand up and protect their areas and their people. We need to have some sort of decision to get involved, because the amount of brutal acts that are happening inside it's awful.
It's amazing, Zach. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Zack Baddorf, the website baddorf.com. He's reporting live on the ground in Syria next to the border there, former talk radio news service fellow there, and I'd love to blow off the next hour of the show and just keep talking to you, Zack. I don't want to take up any more of your time, though. I one last question would be, as a journalist, a journalism student myself, can you talk about the threat of just doing exactly what you're doing right now, and I mean, how safe are you, and talk about I guess the threat of journalism reporting.
Mm-hmm. That is a very important question, you know, I'm staying pretty safe because I'm staying in Turkey. To go across the border into Syria at this moment into rebel-held areas is incredibly dangerous. Across the Salame border crossing point, which is where most people do cross into Syria, there are Al-Qaeda associated groups, Jabhat al-Nusra and Islamic State of Iraq and Syria checkpoints. There are these Al-Qaeda types have checkpoints just about a kilometer inside the border. And once they find out that you're through, they're going to kidnap you. I mean, it's just basically inescapable at this point. You might be able to sneak through, but it's just not worth the risk at this point. Once you're captured, it's incredibly difficult to get released, if at all. There are Western journalists at this very moment who are imprisoned by these guys, journalists who are imprisoned by the Syrian regime under very difficult circumstances. Within Turkey it's okay, but within Syria it's just not possible, and that's safely.
We've been speaking with Zack Baddorf, live on the ground in Syria. Zack, thank you so much for what you're doing. God bless you, and be safe. Get home safe.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope to speak to you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zack. Yeah, you as well. And again, the website is talkradionews.com, and Zack's website is baddorf.com, BADDORF.com. Zack, thank you again.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Okay, you too. You too. Thank you. Wow, I'm stunned. Keep up the good work, man. Be safe. And there you go. There you go.
Yeah, it's very, you know, it realizes, you know, what makes one realize, you know, at least here in the United States, just when you thought it was getting bad here, it can always get worse.
Right, exactly. So, you know, the freedom, the right to petition your government for redress of grievances. You heard about what happened to the protester there? Yeah, be thankful you can voice your opinion here, right? Like we're doing. Hey, more of the Nicole Sandler Show when we come back. RadioOrNot.com, TalkRadio1.com, SoFlowRadio.com. Don't go anywhere.
The Nicole Sandler Show. Truth to power, baby.